Do not let them reach the purification pump!
Feel the thrill of the void. Die.
Hey guys, welcome to a 3.9 Metamorph League video. Today I'll be going over my class that I use to take on most of the endgame content, if not all the endgame content, including a Awakener kill, as well as all of the Conquerors of the Atlas. The character I use to do all this is a Impale champion using Barrage and Rain of Arrows. Currently the character is level 91, and he's given me my first Cyrus kill for the league, and I only wanted to make this video after I killed Cyrus, so I've been holding off making much content. But now that I have killed Cyrus, I'm very happy to recommend this build to anyone looking for a cheap and also very sturdy build for Metamorph League. For Ascendancy, we play a champion for the obvious reason of grabbing Master of Metal, which gives us 2 additional impales, as well as having additional physical damage per impale on an enemy. Picking champion also gives us access to Unstoppable Hero and Fortitude, which guarantees us permanent fortified in all maps and all conditions. This league has been especially brutal for Metamorph encounters because they hit very hard and they also have quite a bit of HP. So we grab Unstoppable Hero and Fortitude, as well as First to Strike, Last to Fall. When you get Adrenaline, you get a massive damage boost as well as a damage reduction. So this is doubly good for a league like Metamorph. You could try a Deadeye variant of this build, maybe a Raider variant of this build, or maybe even a Scion, but generally in this current meta no one really runs Scion anymore because of the Ascendancy points not being very good. In terms of running a Deadeye or a Raider for this type of build, I'm sure they have similar damage, if not more, but you're trading off a lot of defense from the Champion Ascendancy if you do grab the Deadeye Ascendancy or the Raider Ascendancy. So I've gone with Champion here because I know Metamorph is going to be a very punishing league. So Champion has excellent defenses and a lot of layers, so it lets you take a lot of the content a lot easier than the other options. As for our passive tree, it's a generic Impale type of tree where we grab Forceful Skewering and as well as Swift Skewering to increase our Impale effect, as well as making our Impale reach 100% chance. As a ranged build, we also grab a Lionized Fall, which converts melee to bow modifiers in the radius. So we pick up Blade of Cunning as well as Splitting Strikes for a nice bit of damage. We also have a lot of keystones in this build. We take Iron Grip, so physical strength, physical damage from strength applies to projectiles as well as melee attacks. Since we are scaling a lot of physical damage from strength, this helps us with our projectile damage. We also grab Iron Reflexes, so instead of having evasion rating, we get purely armor, and since we run a Vow Molten Shell, we get a massive Vow Molten Shell when we do pop it. We also grab Point Blank. Not much to talk about here. 30% more damage at the start of the movement, so we get in their face with the Barrage, and in some Impale stacks this is going to do a lot of damage. We also path up to the right here to grab some of the bow nodes: King of the Hill, Lethality, Farsight. Other than that, we grab a ton of generic life nodes. So we got the generic Scion life tree here, we got another life wheel here, and herbalism here. And we also pick up Ramparts to increase our fortify effect. And I've anointed Steadfast onto my amulet. There are a bunch of other options you could anoint. I'll have them on the screen in a second. It's a fairly generic duelist tree with a ton of life and a bunch of Impale nodes as well as physical damage nodes. For our jewels, we're looking for maximum life, accuracy, physical damage, or attack speed. Alternatively, you could also run a Watcher's Eye with Impale lasting 2 additional times. The reason why I've decided not to run that jewel in this build because since Uberhelder is harder to find this league, the jewel itself is extremely expensive. I believe it was 11x when I was looking at the prices. It might have come down now since I played this character for quite a while. Alternatively, for 11x, there are a lot more upgrades you could get that give you more damage. I believe 2 additional Impales is about 15 or 16% of damage increase in PoB. So they're probably looking to other options before grabbing that. That's probably like your chase item in this build. Grab that last if possible. In terms of gearing, this character is could be done on a budget, but it's better if you have a little bit of currency to work with the build, as we do need a unique called Arborix. So this is the items. So an Arborix, what an Arborix does is you get 30% more damage with arrows at close range while you have iron reflexes. What Arborix does is it shifts between 2 different types of nodes. You get iron reflexes for 8 seconds, otherwise you get fast shot for 8 seconds. It alternates between both of them. But we can kind of spoof this by grabbing iron reflexes in our passive tree, like we did as we showed here below, here. So if we grab iron reflexes, we have iron reflexes up permanently, so the Arborix effect won't shift every 8 seconds. So we permanently have that 30% more damage on arrows. We don't really care too much about fast shot because our damage is more than enough to be ready to clear mobs. So having that 30% more damage on top of our point blank is a very, very nice damage boost. For our gloves, I highly recommend a pair of Hemophilias. These gloves definitely help you with clearing. Even though our skill is Rain of Arrows, Hemophilias does add a nice chunk to your damage, as well as helps your clear feel a little bit smoother. And it also helps us with defensive mechanics by eliminating on-death effects like porcupines. For the chest, I'm running a Duresso's Defiance. This is a great chest with a good amount of armor and evasion rating, which converts purely into armor for our build, so we get a nice chunk to our phys defense. The effect of this chest is it gives you a endurance charge on kill, as well as giving you a massive increase in your onslaught effectiveness, as well as a bit of life and leech. To compound this effect, we also run a Perseverance. So Perseverance's main effect is while you have Fortify, you also have Onslaught. And since we are a champion, we permanently have Fortify, so therefore we permanently have Onslaught, and that Onslaught effect is being buffed up by the Duresso's Defiance. So we always have a permanent uptime of Onslaught. So I have a 74% speed modifier. I have a 74% movement speed modifier at all times, even within the hideout. So I'm quite fast. For other items, I'm running just a rare helmet with life, bit of res, and I have Rain of Arrows. It has 15% chance to fire an additional sequence of arrows, so roughly 15% increase in damage. Alternatively, you could also run Barrage Fires and additional arrow. That's also a very good enchant for our build. For the rings, I'm running a coral ring with a bunch of reses on it. The other ring, I'm running a topaz ring, life, reses, and I also grab accuracy on this ring because I noticed that this build was a little bit starved for accuracy. So I grab accuracy on my ring and also on my amulet here. A bit of accuracy rating, life, crit multi, whatever res you're missing, as well as grabbing a minus mana cost. This makes the build feel a lot more smoother, nicer quality of life for Barrage. If you miss a Barrage, you still have a bit of mana left. For our quiver, I run just a physical quiver, crit multi, life, dexterity, anything that you're missing. Dexterity specifically because Arborix does have quite a high dex requirement, 212. Normally it's not an issue for duelists to hit it, but I noticed that I was a little bit short, so I just grabbed a bit of dex just in case on my quiver. For the boots, I'm just running a rare pair with movement speed, life, reses. For the enchant, I've got damage leeches life. If you killed recently, this isn't necessary, but it's nice to have a bit more leech in your build wherever it's possible. For our flasks, I'm running a anti-freeze life flask. I'm running a bottled faith. Again, obviously you don't need to run a bottled faith. I've never ran one in the past, but this league they're much cheaper compared to previous leagues. There were 6 or 7x when I was buying it, compared to before leagues were they were like 20, 25x, a ridiculous amount. I took this Bottled Faith over grabbing the Watcher's Eye Jewel, because this gave me a roughly 30% increased damage compared to the 15% in Path to Building. So if you are going to run this build and you have a bit of currency to spare, I highly recommend getting a Bottled Faith before grabbing the Impale Jewel, depending on which is cheaper at the time, because generally Bottled Faith gives a lot more damage than any other item, as well as being a best in slot for a lot of physical builds. For other flasks, I have an Alchemist Quicksilver of Adrenaline, a lot of movement speed. You can quality it up with a Mastermind or Syndicate Craft if you want. Other like Diamond Flask, Anti-Curse, and a Granite Flask of Anti-Bleed. For our Ascendancy Order, you want to grab Unstoppable Hero first, before grabbing Fortitude. Then you want to grab Master of Metal, and then First to Strike, Last to Fall. We grabbed it in this order because we don't get much benefit from Unstoppable Hero until we grab Fortitude. And then Impale, Master of Metal, is nicer when we have a bit more Impale effect and Impale chance. So we grab that a little bit later in our 3rd lab. And then we grab First to Strike, Last to Fall in our 4th lab, because this is like the one that this is for your big damage, for your big bosses. You don't need this until later. So in our order, Unstoppable Hero, Fortitude, Master of Metal, and then First to Strike, Last to Fall. For our Pantheon, depending on what content you're doing, you could either grab Soul of Lunaris for reduced physical damage for more enemies, or if you're focusing more on bossing, you can grab Soul of Solaris for less physical damage with one nearby enemy. I strongly recommend that if you are fighting Cyrus with this build, you grab Soul of Vislatha, so you gain life flasks every few seconds if you haven't used a life flask recently. The reason why we want this with this Pantheon node is because during the fight with Cyrus, he never summons any adds or any monsters. You do get a bit of flasks during each phase, but having this makes the fight a lot more smooth, because we don't get much recovery from our flasks. Alright, for the gem links, in our 6-link setup in our Arborix, I'm running a Barrage, followed by Slow Projectiles, Brutality, Maim Support, Vicious Projectiles, and Impale. For our clearing setup, we run a Vow Rain of Arrows, Maim, Brutality, Impale, and Mirage Archer. You may notice that I'm using a 5-link and not a 6-link. I've noticed the damage for a 5-link is already more than adequate for all the content I've been doing. For the 6-link, you could grab Vicious Projectiles, Slow Projectiles, anything that adds a bit more damage. But from what I've seen with the build, 5-link would be fine already for just clearing general mobs. For our utility, I'm running a Pride, a Dread Banner, Blood Rage, and Dash. In my glove setup, I'm running Molten Shell or Vow Molten Shell with increased duration and cast 1 damage taken support. For our cast 1 damage taken, it's quite a high level because we do want to run a high level Vow Molten Shell. And also we have quite a decent HP pool, so we don't want to be triggering our Vow Molten Shell every few seconds. We want to trigger it only when we take a very big hit, because our Vow Molten Shell gives us a huge boost in terms of our defense. And I'm also running Flesh and Stone in the other socket. In my boots, I'm running Precision, level 1, Phase Run, faster attacks linked to Blink Arrow. If you are grabbing a Watcher's Eye, I highly recommend getting the 2 additional Impale stacks on while using Pride. If that's too expensive, you could also use Precision Crit Multi or Precision Attack Speed. Both of those jewels are also very good for the build. For my thoughts on the build, when I went into making this character, I wanted to make a boss killer for Metamorph as well as for the new Conquerors and ultimately Awakener. I didn't want to make a build guide for this character until I had cleared all of the content, and I could recommend this build to you guys if you do want to follow it. By far, from all my builds I've played in the past, this is one of the tankiest builds I've played, and does not sacrifice much damage. So it's not the highest DPS build I've played. It still has respectable 2 million DPS with Impale in Path to Building, and that you can scale it a lot better with better gear. But that damage is more than enough, clearing all of the content I've come across so far. I think in this league in particular, it's not all about how much damage you have, it's more about being able to stay alive and do damage. So with this build, we have a lot of defensive layers. We have about 21,000 armor just in hideout with a 68% physical damage reduction. This goes up higher when we're in maps, when we get endurance charges, and if we pop adrenaline, we get close to 85 to 90% phys damage reduction. We also have 76% to all max res, as well as having a very tanky Val Molten Shell of around 13 to 14k. This build's real weakness is probably degen. It suffers a little bit if you use standard degen for too long. That's probably one of the only things that can kill you, or massive one-shots. But generally, from what I've encountered, if you have Val Molten show up, nothing comes close to one-shotting this build. It's extremely tanky and should be fine for taking on Metamorph as well as the Conquerors. If you're thinking of making a new character, I strongly suggest you take a look at making a Impale Rain of Arrows Barrage character. It's excellent defense as well as excellent offense for this league. I really enjoyed playing this character and it gave me my first Cyrus kill. So I think its purpose is done now. I'm going to move on to another build. Hopefully I'll make for you guys in the future. As always guys, thanks for watching the video. If you do enjoy the content and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe and leave a like.